Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Just Shillin'. This lovely gentleman across from me is Andy Bellin Skull, and I am his trusty Padawan, Shawn Hottie, and we are your hosts today.
Good evening.
I can I
Hey,
can I
Sean.
can tr- I could trim that up in the middle. I'll
No, no,
cut
no,
this
no.
part out, but I
It's
wanted to get your
no, no, no.
reaction to see
Don't
how it
cut
went.
this. Don't cut this out. This is fantastic. It's how the sausage is made. Come on.
I've been stewing on that ever since last week when we were talking about it. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get a wig. I'm gonna start. I was talking to Madison about it, and I'm like, I had a whole strategy. I'm like, each week, I'm just gonna slowly start adding a piece of cosplay from like Shin Hati, and just to like see how long it takes you to like notice. And it's like, but I'd want to start with like the wig, and so it's like I think that'd be extremely obvious. Um,
You
and
are
so
determined. You are determined that you and I are going to be in cosplay in Japan, aren't you?
it might just be me, and then it's just gonna be awkward because everybody's gonna be like, "Well, Andy, what happened? I thought you guys were doing this." Sean's like dressed to the nines. He's decked out, and so it's either like get on board or there's not a lot of option. There's not a lot of wiggle room here.
Excellent. How you doing, Sean?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. I'm excited to see that we're continuing to do this. It was fun the first time, and I'm glad we got a lot of positive feedback. I've I've also got a new coffee maker in the last couple days, and so
Nice.
I'm just really like, it sounds silly, but man, it's just made my week. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I love every minute of it. It's a fun little like knick-knack hobby to be like just a like a little. It's a good way to like start the morning after like working out and showering and stuff. And it's like, all right, now I'm gonna make my little coffee and make it extra special. But yeah, other than that, everything's been going well. How about you? How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. I mean, it's only been a week since we last spoke, but work is a bit tough. We're still in that kind of January drudgery at work. Few things going on, priority stuff, which is not not much fun at the moment. But yeah, no, everything's good. I mean, I've really looked forward to catching up with you again. It's a really nice break in my week, in my working week, to just forget about the business stuff and get that out of my brain and talk to you about a bunch of nonsense, which we both love. Oh, I did get something, by the way. While you're talking about stuff that you got, um, I might have left it in the main house, but I'm trying to make my den, uh, which is a glamorous name for an outdoor wooden cabin that I have to use because I'm kicked out whenever I do anything like this from the main family home. But I've bought a metal signage, and it's all beaten, battered up, but it's an original Atari advert
Nice.
in the old kind of, the old aluminium metal kind of sign that would have been on the wall of a bar or I don't know, outdoors in an amusement arcade or what have you. But I managed to get my hands and win a bid on this old sign, and it's completely wrecked. But that kind of made it even more important for me to get my hands on. I got a really good deal for it, so hopefully next time we talk, you'll see it on my wall.
I was about to say, like you're making it sound like you're sitting in a like an outhouse or something right now. Like it's a pretty epic looking background, if I can say so myself. So
Oh,
it's pretty
she
cool.
won't let me. She won't let me have my toys in the house.
This sounds like this looks from what I can see like a win-win situation. If you want
Well, that's
my
kind. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, it's pretty
It's
cool.
taken a while. It's still work in progress, but it's taken a while to get this far so far. I've still got to actually paint the walls, but I'm kind of looking the sauna look at them. I'm kind of enjoying the sauna look at the moment. It looks like a for those of you that can't see what I'm looking at, I basically have a during lockdown we were all working out where we can work, and I had an outdoor or garden office built, which is basically a glorified shed, um, um, made out of um, made out of wood. um, and relatively uh, bad wood at that. Anyway, but the point being is that it looks like I'm speaking to Sean from a Swedish sauna,
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it looks
which
awesome, and it's coming. My office used to be, it still is, but mine's like fake wood paneling, so I painted it this dark blue,
right,
and
got it.
so yours at least is real wood and looks real instead of 1960s, 1950s fake wood paneling. Yeah,
We're gonna get there. We'll get there.
I think it looks nice. I mean, I'm jealous personally, but
Thanks, man. Thank you. It's very kind. I'm jealous of the guitars in the background. You've got a awesome. I know we talked about it last week, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. But you've got an awesome display there, mate. They look mint, absolutely mint.
oh, I appreciate that. I mean, this is a scary path to go down because if you start saying that you like the look of them, I can absolutely send recommendations.
Oh,
I
don't
have
do that.
lists and lists of of wants, not nowhere close to needs, but yeah, I can. There's always more room. So, but
So
anyways, okay, go ahead.
no,
You
no,
lead us to the next.
I was going to say. So what have you been up to during the week? Actually, no. Let's. What have you picked up in terms of news in the last week or so? In my mind, there are a couple of bangers that are out there at the moment. But what's top of mind for you? What's the most important thing you've learned of since we last spoke?
I mean, it feels like there's the most obvious one for me is the Bad Batch trailer. Um, I just kind of laughed when it dropped. I mean, I wasn't expecting it, and I just kind of laughed, and I wanted to send you a message. I'm like, man, we started doing this at like the right time. Like
Yeah,
we skipped all those weeks where it was like a drought and there was not much information coming out, and this dropped right before we do this again, and it's like, oh, it's perfect. It's like the universe is telling us something to give us content. Not that we're short on content, but it was just, it's like, yes, everything is coming up positive here. But no, the Bad Batch trailer for the final season dropped, and we'd seen some clips at Celebration, but this was a different level, and there was some pretty big reveals. One that I'm just I'm more excited. Like if you would have told me a month ago who would have shown up at the end of the trailer, I would have been kind of like not negative about it, but just kind of like, okay, that's interesting. But but actually seeing it in the trailer, like I'm a lot more excited than I thought I was going to be. Um, it's I'm
yeah, that
very
was a
curious to see how they tie it up.
yeah, that was quite the gasp moment for me. First off, like you, I kind of luckily the timing for me realizing the trailer had dropped was quite good because I didn't know it was out there until last night, and so I got to see it during during hours that were okay with me. I didn't have to bail and find a way of watching it. And I don't know how I kept it. Sorry, I don't know how. Sorry, night before last. My apologies. Night before last, how I got away with missing all of the noise on social media is beyond me, but I did. Um, but secondly, the thing that came over was before we get to the final shot. What came over was just how reassuringly comforting it was to watch it. It's tight.
Hmm.
The production values, the characters that they've done a really good job in developing their story. You know the pain that I felt when Tech we lost Tech and seeing that the flashback of him falling. I got a theory there, but the flashback of him falling, obviously how I felt about Crosshair, sorry, and how I feel about him now. He's obviously imprisoned. Is it Mount Tantus? He's in Mount Tantus at the moment.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, all felt really good and really tight, and it made me really think, yeah, I'm going to really enjoy this. And then obviously, which there was something quite comforting about that. It was almost like a homecoming. There was something quite comforting that animation, and believe me, I was not a massive fan of or a massive um I was not stalwart, sorry, for the animation. I've enjoyed it, always enjoyed it, but Bad Batch for me has been something exemplary that I've really, really enjoyed. And so seeing that was like, yeah, we got this good stuff that we can rely on coming our way. And then, like you said, the last couple of shots with our friend Ventress turning up was like wicked. And then my next thought was how can that be? Because I don't know if you've read Dark Disciple, and I'm sure there's enough people talking about it online, but she shouldn't be around in in this time period. So I'm really keen to find out from you what you think is going on there.
Well, to kind of to touch on your earlier point about kind of the quality of Bad Batch and kind of our general sentiment towards it. It's one of those shows that I remember pretty vividly when it came out. Not there being a lot of kind of apathy, I guess. What people weren't anti Bad Batch, but there was a lot of apathy around like, I mean, we didn't ask for this. This isn't, whatever, whatever. And I think this is just a testament to the possibility, especially with animation, where they can build like rich stories. It takes time. It does, to really get that investment with the individual characters and things like that. And I think they've done an absolutely stellar job, um,
Mm,
with even just what is this, season three, just 3 seasons, like the
mm,
amount of emotion and feeling that they can get out of these characters, that they've managed to get out of these characters, is pretty incredible. And how much I care for them, like to the point of you don't want anything bad to happen. It's like, we know, like I'm interested to see where they take it, because it could go really bad, or it could go, they go off into the sunset and do whatever, or somewhere in between. But I'm really impressed at the storytelling and the writing. I don't want to use the term slow burn, because I think that's got like a negative connotation with it. But I think with patience and a vision of what you envision the story becoming, I think this is the kind of quality output um, that really matters and really helps drive the franchise and the fan base forward. But
Well,
yeah, I just wanted to.
if you think about it, Bad Batch is a spin-off of a was it a 2 episode arc in the original Clone Story, Clone Wars series. Sorry, season. Yeah, no series. I mean,
Mhm.
it was a couple of really really good episodes, but they were literally that. That was it across 7 seasons. That was kind of that was it. It was, and then to create this this following, I think is fair play and great praise to the guys over at Lucasfilm. And dare I say it, Dave. He's done a really good job in creating something here that from basically nothing. And I like that because I've always loved the background or the tertiary characters that what's their story. And I've always loved the story of the any man or the everyman. Um, Probably more than maybe some of the prime characters or the key characters, and to take and to make a 3 season arc of these characters that appeared in only a couple of episodes of the Clone Wars, I think is a good job. And then if there's a way that they can kind of tie the Omega story in with Boba at some point, then even better. But if not, then I'll be happy fed what we get in season 3. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I was kind of agreeing with you. I think they've done a really
No,
good
no, I
job.
think that's totally like, I feel the same way. Like, it's the everyman stories. It's not that I don't like the main Skywalker line, or the Force use, like the big flashy Force users, but I like it when there can be a story that's like parallel to the main events, but it doesn't have the huge impact and galaxy wide repercussions. Like, it can just be self-contained. And I love when,
Yeah.
because I think it's easy to make something huge and that impacts everybody. It's from a story standpoint. It's like, oh, we can all write the hero's journey like to different varying degrees, but like it's a formula. But to me, I feel like it's more difficult to play in that sandbox and write a story that is compelling, emotional, and has weight to it, but it's not. It doesn't involve those big characters. You have to almost lower, like the stakes are still there, but you can't go big and flashy because then it would
Well,
interrupt all of the big mainline stuff.
it's great because it also makes the galaxy larger as well.
Mm-hmm.
One of the occasional frustrations I've had in Star Wars storytelling, not just TV and film, but also in the narrative. Sorry, the written and the comics as well. Is that everyone knows each other and it's typically related. There's only seems to be one family or one bunch of friends that are having all of the adventures in the galaxy, and it's a massive galaxy. So the idea of stuff happening parallel to and maybe separate from the main storyline is fantastic. Again, it's about world building. It's about really establishing what the key themes are and the key moods are in a galaxy under this oppressive empire. I love that. I love that the story of somebody else, what's going on at the same time. We talked about it last week a little bit about what the behind the scenes is happening. We know what the main story is. That's been done to death almost. And what meanwhile, while that was happening, what else is going on in the galaxy? Because it is a big galaxy, and there's an awful lot of oppression going on, and there's an awful lot of hurt, there's an awful lot of discontent going on. What else is going on to build up to this point that we see in, for example, A New Hope, where the galaxy says enough is enough. I love that. I love that kind of. Again, I wouldn't say world building because that's specific to planets, but galaxy building. It's all great stuff for me.
Well, it's the grit that makes it feel real.
Yeah,
It takes
yeah.
it from a, a fairy tale, like a to something that feels like it could be real. It's those low level details of what are people doing and how did we get here, um, instead of just kind of like the miraculous hero story. But all of that to say, you mentioned this
Uh,
as Ventress. How does this happen?
Sorry,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Can
Go
I?
ahead.
Sorry, I'm really sorry because I know I asked the question without giving you time to think about the what the Bad Batch means to you as well. Another thing that means an awful lot to me for the Bad Batch is the fact that, and you mentioned this. Um, Shout out Catherine on your pod with Catherine a few days back now. But also, we were talking about it a while ago, and certainly the Scruffies talk about it a while ago on their pod. The fact that that the Bad Batch is set out almost like an exact team dynamic to either the A Team or Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think is phenomenal.
Mhm.
It's a trope, but it's such a damn good trope that it gives me the feels. Do you know what I mean? Do you
Oh,
know what I mean? And
absolutely.
I'm sure there's a bunch of folk that be rolling their eyes somewhere and saying, "Oh, it's such a cliche." Yeah, but it's the best cliche ever.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is absolutely awesome. I love that. I love that about that dynamic about the four of them, five of them.
Well,
Sorry,
well, especially
being
when you
cross
could
there.
take that dynamic and and kind of like not dilute it, not water it down, but make it not so prevalent. Like I know when I first saw like Hunter, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like like it's just this design. And there's times where I still like roll my eyes at it, but like it's funny. But
Hey, John.
when they can yeah when they can build a story around it and like make it not like that's not their only personality. Like that's their main characteristic, but
Yeah,
it's they can like especially when you get in like season 2 and things like that and you see them kind of emotionally grow beyond uh what they maybe their like uh stereotype or like caricature is. You see like Wrecker becoming very kind of loving and brotherly, paternal kind of with Omega and things like that, and just it's almost like you build up the stereotype and then you're kind of slowly breaking it down to show the arc of these characters, um, and their growth is I don't know if it's probably it can't be easy, and I think that's a winning combination because it's one of those things where you're creating a stereotypical kind of kids show. It's like, oh, it's a cartoon, but then you pull the rug out and it's like, oh no, this actually has a lot of depth, um, and meaning in a lot of these things. And so yeah, that's I love it too. Like anytime there's because you always end up with a favorite. You always end up with like I always lean towards like the techie kind of because like it's either like who you see yourself as or who you wish or kind of
Yeah,
want to be. And so it's like, yeah, I always saw like myself. I'm more tech oriented and and I always kind of saw myself in like a Donatello or a tech where it's like, I'm not a wrecker. I'm not going to go knock down doors, but like I'm valuable in other ways in
yeah,
a lot of ways. So
yeah,
you can kind of
and likewise, I've always enjoyed the heavies, and it's it's not because I'm a particularly rough and tough guy. In fact, I mean, you guys know me. You know, I'm as soft as a kitten. But I'm 6'2". I'm a reasonably big guy, and I and he's also uh, somewhat challenged in the common sense department, which is a little bit like myself. So I really relate to Rekka an awful lot. So yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Totally with you.
so Asajj.
Asajj, the elephant in the room. Go on.
It it's it's one of those things where I'm curious as well to see how they pull it off. Um, if they, I'm never like I always kind of live in the world of if it happens in the books, it's canon until like it's in a visual medium. Um, it'll be I wouldn't be upset if they like did like kind of not retcon it or just like or if it's before the events of that. I haven't dug too deep
Yeah.
into the timeline of when this takes place versus Dark Disciple, but it I hope they don't completely undo that book because I thought there was a lot of really quality story in there, and
So
narrative.
so just to be clear on timeline, so that we you and I are kind of cool about where we're going with this. Does Dark Disciple was essentially the missing the missing season, which ended up being of Clone Wars, which ended up being with Filoni's blessing, being put into novel format, and it is, I believe, um, set after the Clone Wars that we know, but before the Revenge of the Sith. So in theory, with and sorry, and in turn, therefore, before season 7 of the Clone Wars. So with that in mind, the Bad Batch current timeline is a few years after. So that's my understanding. But as a caveat to that, Lucasfilm are saying they are respecting the written word of Dark Disciple. They've put that actually in their PR statement. So I'll hand it, I'll pass it back to you. But to probably answer the really difficult question, how can this be?
I mean, you could always say it's a flashback or something that happened in the past. Uh, I mean, if I was going to go down that path of it's not in the current timeline, the my answer would be maybe it has to do with I don't remember if she had a name, but older Omega sister.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a backstory there that is going to be fleshed out because I think that's going to have to be a critical piece of this season. Of you can't introduce oh I'm your sister, without that being like to me I feel like that's going to be like one of the linchpins for this entire season of whether she sees the the issues with keeping Omega and things like that, and then help becomes a good guy per se, or if there's some critical backstory from her perspective, that we go back in time and see how things became what they are. That's where I would probably fall with the going back in time thing. If it's current, ooh, then now we're getting into spicy territory, because I don't really see how you can respect the book
Well,
if she's there.
whatever happens, it's going to annoy somebody, isn't it?
Oh,
So,
for sure.
without a doubt, and let's not forget, we've seen, depending on people's frame of mind or perspective on things, including just life in general, it's going to annoy somebody or other as to what they do. At the end of the day, she's never she's never gone beyond a novel and an animation, so they kind of it's relatively low risk with what they do. So in my mind, it's either, like you say, a flashback. It may well be she never died, she didn't die, and they'll not rewrite that the ending of Dark Disciple, but explain how she was somehow saved. Thirdly, don't forget she's a night witch, and night
Yeah.
witch are pretty good at resurrecting folk. And then lastly, don't forget this whole thing is about saving Omega, in Mount Tantus, which is a cloning facility,
Mhm.
or experiment. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that they can do. And again, whatever the answer is going to be, and it may well be something even different. I mean, it's going to annoy somebody or other, but quite frankly, I'm up for the story because I think that she is as a villain, or well, actually, as a well, not even a villain towards the
Like an
end.
like an anti-hero kind of character
Anti-hero,
almost.
yeah, like an anti-hero towards the end. Um, I think she's amazing. I think she's absolutely fantastic. I think in my mind, she's one of those secondary characters that an equal has an equal prowess with the likes of Tobias Beckett, with uh, um, oh, good, the bounty hunter. You killed.
Cad
Oh,
Bane.
no, no, no. Well, okay, Cad Bane, but I'm also thinking of the one that was in animation, but she was in. Oh, come on.
Oh, the one with the antenna that
Yeah.
comes out of her head.
Oh, goodness me. Anyway, the point being is that she's on a par with those guys, but
Aura
because of the
Singh.
way Aura Singh, thank you very much. But because of the way that she was characterized during the Clone Wars, and some amazing, amazing voice acting from the actress that played her, she's got every right to be resurrected, just to get some more of that without people being upset that she'd be resurrected. Because let's face it, the guy that brought her in the first place is the same guy that's going to be that's developing Bad Batch or overseeing Bad Batch for us as well. So he can do whatever he wants with his toys.
Well, I think there's, like, I don't know if the phrase translates over there or not, but there's still meat on that bone. Like,
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of story to still tell there. Like,
yeah,
that was the book was good, but there's a lot of potential for that character still. So if that wasn't the end, then I think there's still an interesting and intriguing storyline to come from that. And to your point of when we're talking about her being a night sister, the that it that brings up an interesting point, because, like, not to talk about Marvel again, but I remember when What If season 1 came out, like, I as soon as I watched that, I'm like, this is very intentional. There's a group of marketing people and story people that are putting this out very intentionally. They are introducing concepts that are uh, abstract, more extreme than maybe what is normal, in preparation for something larger to come. And
yeah,
so that way you're not. So for What If season 1, it was kind of introducing a lot of concepts that were brought in for the Doctor Strange sequel and some other things. And so that
yeah.
way people were kind of mentally prepared for it. And then when that movie came out, it wasn't just like completely mind blowing. I wonder if it's almost similar. If it's a coincidence or something similar is happening here, where in Ahsoka you have Night Sisters, resurrection, this kind of, to me it's almost like you kind of see this convergence starting to happen of, like, that was the introduction, a light introduction of it to it in visual media. And then Bad Batch season 3 is going to get a little bit closer, and maybe even where they meet of, okay, we have Night Sister magic of resurrection and things like that, and could that even be fully realized with the cloning facility and
Oh,
the force
oh,
of, do you see, could there be a potential of that's where maybe force sensitive clones are force sensitive, I'm throwing air quotes out, of like, are they truly force sensitive, like a Jedi, like Skywalker, things like that, or is it a Night Sister magic instilled force sensitivity for people like Omega or whoever? Like, could we see those two, natural force sensitivity and Night Sister magic, converging?
dude, I love your brain because I'd never even thought of that. And I think, but while you're talking, I'm also thinking of the kind of, I wouldn't say wasted opportunity, but the kind of um, the way that Mando season three was ended, in that we had this, we were hinted on in Mando season two that Moff Gideon was dealing with clones, and then we found out the story was, yeah, I'm going to clone myself and make it force sensitive, hence the reason why I need his blood. Which was, I wouldn't say it's a disappointment, it's just the way it was. And then you see the start of Rise, where you have obviously Kylo Ren makes his way to Exegol, and you see these vats of Snoke type clones before he faces off with or meets the Emperor, or the resurrected somehow, the resurrected Palpatine. And I always thought that, was Snoke a botched clone? Was he a botched experiment? And the more, and we don't, and we've always been promised by Filoni and Favreau that Mando, or the Mando universe, will bridge the gap between Return of the Jedi and the Force Awakens, and there's so much good storytelling to happen there that I don't think has yet been realized. And it makes me think that, maybe you're on something here, in that they're using the Ahsoka story to kind of resurrect the idea of of the Dathomir witches. They're using the Mandalorian story to kind of get the idea that there is cloning, albeit badly, that there is some cloning going on, and maybe the convergence point is essentially what leads to what we know as, what becomes the First Order, with led by Snoke, and behind him the resurrected Emperor. That would be extremely smart.
And I
Um,
think, and I'm sure, well, I want to say this as a caveat, I'm sure there's individuals out there who will immediately reply with, if they figured it out back then why did it take so long? Because it seems like there's multiple instances of this, like, cloning for sensitivity. But I'll compare it to real life, when we try to create new medicines or vaccines or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like everybody is in complete harmony and doing it together. Like, there's different vested interests, and if somebody figures out part A, other person's in part B, like, and then as things slowly get wiped out, like a Moff Gideon, it's like, assuming his little piece is now gone. So it's like they're making progress in all these different ways, and it finally takes the First Order to really figure it out, and by whatever means that took.
Yeah, but we already knew that the process, in inverted commas, was not perfect. I mean,
Mhm.
hence the reason why there are multiple versions of clones in vats. Secondly, um, Sheev's grandson, who was Sheev's son, in other words, Ray's dad, was not a perfect clone because he
Mhm.
wasn't force sensitive. So we know that, and I'm just wondering that, that yeah, maybe they might have known how to do it, but it's the bringing together. Let's face it, it may well take 10, 15, 20 years to actually, for this clone to be able to grow into a fully fledged adult anyway, as we've seen before, over in Camino. But the point being is that if you've got these two parallel factions of enemies, if you like, that are working on their own agenda, and the convergence is what becomes either the resurrection of the Emperor or certainly the creation of Snoke. Um, that would be really cool. And yes, of course, it's retrospective because we know that there wasn't as much planning as perhaps we'd have liked in the development of the sequel, but it's a really tidy story to explain what happened in the 20 years prior to. I know that in theory, Force Awakens is 30 years, but I'm assuming to that convergence points will be the perfection of the cloning itself, the force sensitive cloning itself. It will take some time. That would be really really cool to see, and it would make sense for that almighty Avengers moment that we're all waiting for in Filoni's film, where supposedly Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Mando, and hopefully Boba Fett as well all come together in one hurrah at the end, which I'm assuming will involve the Witches of Dathomir and Thrawn, and hey, who knows, a resurrected Gideon. Great.
Well, yeah, it's yeah. I think that's. I'm starting to kind of get like the tingles thinking about is it all tied together with a common goal of ex, ex, the evil is the convergence of science and magic to create uh fake force sensitivity evil for the purposes of evil, and is like are all these shows gonna culminate in the overcoming that by whatever means. I'm interested to see how Skeleton Crew ties in. That's what I'm really excited for. But it's I I have
I'm glad you
theories.
said that.
They're never correct, but it's always fun to speculate.
I'm glad you're excited about that because I am as well. I think it'd be a nice breather. It'd be like, oh, stress, stress, tension, tension, cannon, cannon, cannon. And I think that I really hope that that Skeleton Crew is going to be a nice break from the norm, and we can just kick back and not overanalyze it too much. But yeah, I'm glad you think that.
Well, I
Cool.
mean, yeah, I was sold by one word in the description when they're like, "It's going to be like the old Anblin films." It's like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all I need. That's all I needed.
I'm
I don't even
in.
care. It's like I'm in. Like I'm looking for that cheesy kind of fun story, well encapsulated and just lighthearted about kids on a little adventure. I think that'll be exciting, but
So we'll
more on that
have
to come.
I was going to say, I mean, we've got some good content coming our way, so we'll try and do something creative like the real professional podcasters do around reviewing the episodes as they land. So what else is out there, my friend, that has caught your eye this week in terms of news? Anything else beyond Bad Batch?
Uh, to shift gears a little bit and kind of step into gaming, there's the I just like this. I don't follow the news on gaming very much, but I did just watch the Indy Five or not Indy Five, the new Indiana Jones game trailer, which I thought was super cool. And I know that's something that you're excited about as well because I know we've lightly discussed it. Um, but do you want to? I think you're probably more excited. Do you want to talk about it first? And
I'm just,
get
I'm just, I just. We haven't had an indie game for quite a while, and I think it's great that Bethesda is bringing this under a huge shroud of secrecy. No one knew, no one saw this coming. Although they have been talking about an exclusive title for quite a while, and well, certainly I, mistakenly thought that might have coincided with EA losing the exclusivity agreement on Star Wars, and thought it might have been a Star Wars game. So yeah, they're releasing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It looks like a fun romp. Uh, it looks like a on face value. It looks like a great little adventure, which will satisfy many people that are looking for more indie content. It looks quite puzzle based. Sorry, which is again akin to certain types of games, but also akin to indie as a franchise. I guess the only thing that I would say at the moment is that it's exclusively first person, which means that um, folks that are happy to play games like Halo, Doom, and so on will be familiar with that. But folks like myself that perhaps prefer a more of a third person, we want to see the character actually move and interact with the world as opposed to being in their eyes, won't have that opportunity at the moment. I understand, because it's 100% first party view, and the rationale from the developer team is that they want us to experience what life is like as indie, rather than spectating indie and pressing a few buttons to move him a certain way. And while I kind of appreciate that, I think that being a little bit more flexible on the maybe on the gaming mechanic might have done them a little more justice. But I'm looking for it either way, and I'll still get it and I'll play it because it's Indiana Jones and it's a type of game that I think that I would enjoy. Um, because Indiana Jones himself is not a particularly we're not talking about warriors here with Gatling guns. We're talking about a guy that fumbles his way around, and as he says, he makes it up as he goes. So I'm looking forward to the adventure. Um, and it looks to be coming out this year, which is fantastic and an amazing secret for a developer like Bethesda to keep. Bearing in mind, that the the standard incubation and developing time of a game is years, multiple years, and for them to keep this quiet for so long and release it, what I think came out as a surprise. I'm not sure about yourself, but it was a surprise to me. I think is quite a quite an achievement. Um, I think that because it comes under obviously it's Bethesda, which means it comes under the new arrangement. Bethesda is now part of Microsoft, so it's now part of the Xbox brand, or first party studios, as they say. So are they looking to this to be um, a step in the right direction for getting more exclusive content? Uh, I would say yes, and I think it's a really, really good step in in that direction. Um, Starfield, uh, I played Starfield when it first came out, but it's a very, very niche game. It's a very, very niche game. It's a certain type of um, it's a game that attracts a certain type of gamer that likes the slow burn, um, and to build worlds and to do a lot of customizing and a lot of mining and outpost creation, and it really gets off on designing ships. It's a very, very um, a complicated game, which some people may or may not um, have the attention span for, or indeed for it even to be their bag. And I think that indie as a franchise and as a gaming medium will be a little bit more accessible to more people. Um, so I'm hoping that this is kind of their opportunity to rebalance the very, very the very different, or sorry, the rebalance the market, as it were, so that we as gamers can enjoy many games on many different platforms from many different manufacturers, and kind of make it a lot more interesting and less binary as a gaming industry.
No, I think
That
that
makes
makes
sense.
sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. To your point about Starfield, I was one of those people that binged it pretty heavily when it first came out, and I put a massive amount of time into it because, like, I have narrow windows of when I can and really invest a lot into games, and when it's story
Sure.
like that, I want to get through the story, but not in like a rushing kind of way. So it's kind of like about finding that balance, and like I I want to know how it ends. Like I want to see where the
Yeah.
art goes. But I'm a huge player of like factory automation, resource management kind of games. And like I kind of see your point of like, okay, Starfield was this huge game of it's almost like a bunch of other games smashed into one really,
Yeah.
really big game, and you can find your niche. And it's a huge investment. I agree with like the excitement and the anticipation for this indie game because it is it's more linear. It's a story driven game. It's more accessible for a lot of people who can't invest 80 to 100 hours into a game that is so variable and has all these other side pieces. I'm excited for a couple of things just from the trailer. Like the Game Pass day one is awesome. I love that. Um, as a Game Pass uh, subscriber, I think that's really cool to see more and more games go Game Pass day one. Um, I think it's refreshing in a lot of ways to kind of step away from that uh, pre-order bonus, super pre-orders kind of stuff, and just know, like, being able to feel comfortable with like my Game Pass subscription to say I'm gonna get top tier gaming. Like, not that this isn't the first example of it, but it's reassuring, and I like that we're getting more like big games coming to Game Pass day one.
Yeah.
On a slightly different note, I love the Wilhelm scream that they did in the trailer. Like, that stood out
Yes.
super
Yeah.
obvious, and I actually like audibly laughed out loud at that. I was like, "That's awesome." I'm glad that we have some fans of the Wilhelm scream in the trailer editing. But no, I'm really excited about the indie game because I think it's not just more not just more accessible, but it's also um, I'm hoping it's a step down in speed too, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Where I like that time period. I like that it's not going to be super modern machine guns and all this other crazy like high speed stuff, which I like those games, but I like that this is going to be more puzzle driven. From what it appears, like there's only so much tech that's available at that time, and so you're kind of operating at a different speed, and I think that makes it more accessible as well. And so that's exciting. It does suck that they're not doing like a third person view. Hopefully that changes, because I just even being able to switch is nice. So I know there's a lot of gamers who who get like motion sickness from like first person view with the constant moving. And so I'm hoping
Yeah.
that for in terms of accessibility, I hope that they provide that as an option, um, to kind of step back into third person. But we'll
Yeah.
see. But I'm excited for it. I will definitely play it. I like the indie franchise. I like uh, just kind of all that it represents, like the bumbling hero, who's not always not the best person, but it's just fun. It's built on being fun, and it kind of has like weird historical elements in it too. But yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Cool. That's cool. Um, so I believe we have our first email. Is that correct?
We do. One thing I'll touch on before we do it. It's real
Okay.
quick. Just
Yeah.
it's a recommendation. I forgot to add it with the Star Wars stuff. Um, I did see a video this week that came out from Disney about a gentleman who works as an Imagineer. It's kind of like my weird niche YouTube subscriptions, but there's some interesting stuff in it. There's a gentleman who works for Disney Imagineering who's got an award. I won't go into all that, but at the end of it, they kind of talk about some tech that he kind of really imagineered, engineered, and kind of came up with. But I highly recommend anybody who's a fan of Star Wars or like the Disney parks to go watch it, because basically what it was, they advertised it as kind of a dynamic flooring that you can stand on, and it's like used for VR applications. They kind of kept framing it that way, so you can like walk on this floor, but it's not like a treadmill. It's like completely 360, and it's kind of unbounded. It's these like little individual tiles, and they kept doing demonstrations of it. But what I found very interesting, as a huge Star Wars fan and as a big Disney Parks fan, during the end demonstrations where they were kind of monologuing over the top of it, they kept they were moving people, like they had people sitting on boxes on it, and then like they would move the boxes around almost like an old Xbox Connect, like a camera kind of thing, and the person was like moving their hand around, and it was moving this person around on a box. And all I could think of is like the real world application for this is going to be at Galaxy's Edge in the parks, and they're gonna make this into like guest interactions of force sensitivity. Like they're gonna be like, whether it's a kid
Yeah.
who can walk up to a railing and be like, "Oh, practice your Jedi powers," and they put their hand out and they move their hand around, and they're moving objects around, or there's maybe a Kylo Ren or some stormtroopers, and that's what's most exciting to me. It's like I subscribe to like Disney Research and all these things, and like you see kind of they never really show what they're gonna do with it, but I thought that was really cool to see. It's like, yeah, sure, VR, yeah, that's a real world application, but what are they gonna do for them specifically? And it's like, oh, this is 100%. I'll put money on it. This is going into a Disney park or something similar, so that normal people, guests like us, can do force sensitive things. And to me, that's really exciting.
I love that kind of stuff. Isn't there a documentary on Disney Plus about kind of the behind the scenes of all the tech that goes on there
There
and the
is. It's
kind of
like
the research they do?
yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, they have one where it's about like different rides and different tech that they do. It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. I wish they'd like tighten it up a little bit, because I think it's a lot of time to invest in something. But if that's your jam, absolutely, it's something really
But
really good to
I love that
watch.
kind of stuff, and I find I'm like yourself in that I love a little bit of new tech. I mean, when I mean VR has been a thing for quite a few years now, but AR, augmented reality has been relatively new in the last 10 years or so. And I love the real world, I love the real world application of that outside of either entertainment or defense. I mean, ultimately, you think about an awful lot of we know and love in terms of the technology that we have today, the size of semiconductors, the size of chipsets, the Velcro is all developed, it all had a real world purpose for being invented, and typically it's typically down to either defense or the high end or premium real world uses. And what I love about the Imagineers over at Disney and other companies, not just Disney, is that this stuff they're building for you and I today for our entertainment value will have a real time practical application. The idea of a manipulative floor that can move you and I, or keep someone static while they're trying to walk, has massive implication in medical, for example.
Yeah,
And I love the fact that these guys, for the sake of our enjoyment, put a ton of cash into recruiting graduates and getting these young brains looking at this kind of technology and developing this kind of technology under some really solid mentorship from these very clever inventors, these crazy inventors. But the longer term, the more protracted application for this outside of the Disney park, I think the potentials are endless, and I love that kind of stuff. I really do.
yeah, same here. It's like developing generic enough technology that it can be repurposed for positive things in the world, but also for nuanced things like Star Wars. But but
Like Star
as you were
Wars.
saying, yeah, but as you were saying, we did get our first piece of
Yay!
feedback, email, voicemail
Excited.
from our buddy Chris. I'll read. He had a question for us. He said, "Your conversation last week about the creator got me thinking. What are your favorite sci-fi movies of the past 24 years? Two of mine are Danny Boyle's Sunshine from 2006 and Ridley Scott's The Martian from 2015. Do you have those off the top of your head?"
Well, yeah, he made so we need to. I mean, I mean, Chris is a good guy, and we know him as our friend that also likes a little bit of wars. So I'm assuming the question we have to assume the question excludes Star Wars, because obviously we had the last two films from the prequels, and obviously the sequels and everything else that's come um, since 2000. So excluding Star Wars, which we'll assume is a given. Um, in recent years, I would say I love the epic stuff. So I mean, um, I loved anything like Lord of the Rings. I mean, it was for me. It was it was epic. But we're talking sci-fi, not fantasy. So with that in mind, the closest I can get to it is I would say uh, June or Dune, as Jimmy Dice would say. Um, so Dune is a book series that I read as a kid that, like many, never thought it would translate particularly well to cinema. I think Denis Villeneuve have done an amazing job in what he's done so far. I am stoked for March when I think it's March when Part Two comes out. I cannot wait for that to take forward because I think he's turned what is a very stoic and quite frankly serious and quite at times hard to get through novel and turn it into something that is still quite long, protracted. And I know that it's some people's bag and not others. But turn it into something that which I think is I can apply the word epic to. Um, the other one is I've always been a fan of Blade Runner, and I thought that his the same guy's treatment with Blade Runner Blade Runner 2049 was phenomenal. And again, a long film, beautifully shot, absolutely stunning. You know, all of that kind of sugar coated with a Hans Zimmer theme tune or soundtrack. Sorry, I just loved every minute of it. Again, it's a slow burn. It's a very, very cerebral type of film, but I like that kind of stuff. And then on the more should we say popcorn type of films, recently, I've loved in the 2000s and beyond. I've loved films like AI. I've been watching AI. I've been revisiting iRobot. I've revisited Legend. Sorry, I Am Legend recently, and I've revisited another one that I think might be in your list as well, but Minority Report and Edge of Tomorrow, or what was it called? Rinse, repeat, die, rinse, repeat,
It's Edge
whatever.
of Tomorrow for me always. Like it's
Solid films, which which I think that actually those are all standalone films, with the exception of Blade Runner, obviously, and Dune, which kind of I'm putting to one side. They're all standalone films, which I think are really, really good. And I, God, these are all my favorites, so I can't give one answer. And then lastly, I love the work of Neil Blomkamp. District 9, Elysium, and Chappie, I think are a trilogy, although they're in theory they're 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 individual stories, but in my brain they're set within the same universe. I think that his approach to filmmaking, I think, is superb. His choice of actors and the way he executes his films have been fantastic. And in fact, on a recent pod, again with Catherine, shout out Catherine again, I kind of said that an awful lot of Gareth's work on The Creator reminds me an awful lot of Neil's work, and I love that kind of guerrilla, low cost, cheap and cheerful type of sci-fi making. It reminds me of a time where sci-fi was cheap in the late 60s and early 70s, and I love it because it doesn't matter, because it's all kind of wrapped up in a really compelling and human story. What about
I love it.
yourself?
I love it. I'm just reeling at your list there. There's those last ones are I'm really glad you said it because I can't believe I didn't think of it myself. Because District 9 is one of my like my top movies all time. Um,
Oh mate, it
it's
came
just
out of
one of
nowhere as well, wasn't didn't it? I mean, it was under advertised. It slipped out there and was an overnight classic. It was phenomenal.
well, I mean, I could be 100 million% wrong on this, but I thought at some point, like I remember reading when that movie came out, that somebody like I thought it had been like originally proposed as like a Halo movie, but then it fell through and then it became that. I don't know if that's true at all. Do not take like I just remember those rumors being out there at that time. And
I think you're right. I think Peter Jackson Peter Jackson was looking to make a Halo film, and I think he was looking at Neil to be the the director or something like that, and it never happened. Um, Either way, we were well fed because that's a result of a film. It really is.
Yeah, that movie is incredible. I mean, that's definitely on my list. I also kind of looked at this list of like, what are those movies that like just pop into my head all the time. I tried to avoid like the stereotypes. I didn't want to go look at like a listicle or things like that to try to come up with them. So it's like, what are those movies that kind of those sci-fi movies that just I can't they just I think about them like too much,
Yeah,
like that the thing that was going around a couple weeks ago where it's like, oh, people think about the Roman Empire all the time. It's like, no, what are those movies that I think
yeah,
about? And one of those is District 9 for sure.
yeah,
Minority Report, I think about that, like that movie pops in my head way too frequently. Specifically the like the public transportation that they have there. I'm like, why are we working on autonomous cars? We should just be riding on Minority Report trains or vehicles that all
yeah,
communicate with each other
yeah.
and just bob and weave each other. They don't need to be independent. And just all sorts of stuff with like that movie. It just lives in my head rent free. Another one that I think about a lot is Arrival. That movie was
Oh,
I haven't rewatched it a lot, but it's one of those ones where I just think about it all the time. Like that movie had an impact
yeah. It's
on
heavy.
me.
I mean,
Like,
again, it's another Denny film. It's
yeah,
really heavy. It's heavy going, and it's but it's beautiful,
yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
A big one that I'm sure is on everybody's list is Mad Max Fury Road. I think they took that franchise or that kind of that universe and just amped it, I took it to 11, cranked it up, and just made it. I have no complaints, no criticisms of that movie. I'm pumped for Furiosa. It is just I love it. I love that movie. I think about it. I could watch it over and over and over again.
What a day! What a lovely day! Yeah,
It's
it's a
so
great
good,
film.
so good, so good, so good. And this one's kind of it's a little bit older than 24 years, just by a smidge, but it's another one of those movies that just lives in my head rent free, and that is the sci-fi horror flick Cube and all of its subsequent um, sequels, where it's kind of it was right around that. I think it came out in '97, and so it's a little bit older than 24 years. But
Is that
that one
the
of just
is that the prison one where they they got to make their way through rooms and the floors changing and I don't think I've ever seen it.
Cube is kind of like it's similar to that. It's they're in kind of like a three-dimensional uh torture killing box. It's almost like it's kind of like a what would you say, like a Squid Game kind of thing, but it's also
Right.
kind of like Saw. So it's kind of got that campy horror uh kind of vibe to it, but just the out of the box, like, okay, how do we get out of this thing? And it's kind of got like a nerdy math element to it too, and just I don't know. It's one of those ones where I'm like, that was different and that was weird. And I think I watched it like at uh, a developmentally critical time in my life where I'm like, that one's just going to live with me forever. I'm just going to carry that one because it's not a particularly good movie. I wouldn't say like it's not one I'd just pop in now and be like, you know what we should do this Saturday night? We should watch Cube. But it's one of those ones where at a certain point in time, I watched it. It was what it was, and it lives. It's made me who I. It's one of the things that's made me who I am today.
Dude, there some of the most bizarre films out there or moments in pop culture that I hold close to my heart that my family look at me as if to say, but it's really bad. Or I don't understand why when there's this over here, which is clearly, again, it's about beauty is in in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, no, I'm with you, and it's about the moment in time where it worked for you. Um, Sorry, I'm digressing, but there was a film I don't know if you a Ridley Scott film called Legend with very young Tom Cruise, um, and uh, and he played Jack, the forest boy that had to rescue uh, um, his beloved from The Devil, who was played by Tim Curry. Yeah, Tim Curry. And it 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 really honed true with me at the time, because the soundtrack, depending on which version you had in your country, the soundtrack was the better soundtrack was by a band called Tangerine Dream, very synth centric, and it just landed with me at a time where I was, I guess, an emotional teenager, felt certain ways about my girlfriend at the time or what have you, was in love, and it just landed. And it's not that great a film. It's really not that great a film, but it means an awful lot to me. It means a heck of a lot to me. And I'm damned if I can't get that copy on DVD or Blu-ray or anything. Can't get the copy of the original American theatrical release that has the Tangerine Dream soundtrack. You can only in the UK you can only get the theater release, which is it's nowhere near as good. Sorry, mate, I digress. Sorry.
No, no, that's awesome. Like as you were saying that, I was struggling to not go down my own mental
Do
rabbit
it.
hole of
That's what we're
all of
here.
those campy films. It's like, oh man, it's. I tried watching it again recently, like the Caravan of Courage and things like that. Like those were of a time for me
Yeah.
of like going to the video rental store with my friend when we'd stay the night at each other's houses, and it's like, I mean, in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, there wasn't a lot of selection available at some of these video rental places, but I remember seeing like Caravan of Courage and things like that and being like, dude, Star Wars, like let's go back and watch this. Um, Another one was like along that same lines. It's like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Mac and Me.
Yes.
It's kind of, oh my gosh, that movie
Brilliant. Brilliant.
was. I think it explains a lot about my early childhood development. But yeah, that
Yeah.
was that was one. Um, and then I think all the Ernest, like Ernest Goes to Camp
Yeah.
movies,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
Jim Varney. Those those are all just so vivid in my mind. It's like even if it's those kind of movies that you see them once at a
Yeah.
certain age and they just live visually. You know exactly where you were. You remember the sights, the smells, the exact situation, and it's like it wasn't about the content of the movie. It was the way it made you feel, and like the simpler times or whatever the phrases you want to wrap around it of like, man, you look back and you were living the dream before life became what it is. Uh,
Yeah. Before
and it holds
responsibility got in the way. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
and holds a special place in your heart for that. But
But let's talk about. I mean, Chris has got some good answers here himself as well. I mean, Danny Boyle. I think we spoke about last week. Danny Boyle is one of my favorite directors anyway. And then his take on sci-fi, I thought, was really really good. Again, Cillian Murphy doing a really really good job. Um, doing a really really good job there. Um, and
I don't know if I ever saw Sunshine, but I'm gonna have to add that to my list to watch. But I did see The Martian, and I'd listened to the audiobook prior to watching it,
yeah,
and it was a really good movie. I thought they took a really good book, a book that was already really great, but
yeah,
it was a book format. It was a book's book, and then they took it. I think they did the right kind of adaptation to make it really good for the screen without like it wasn't like a complete departure from the book, but I thought they changed the right things that it was still respectful to the book, but also not overloaded with cruft, I guess. It was really good. Yeah, that was top notch.
that's a really good point. Actually, we should spend some time as a topic one week. We should think about what kind of what media has crossed really well between formats. So what I mean. I think of class. I mean, you've already mentioned Minority Report, which is a Philip K. Dick novel. I mean, the guy was again Blade Runner or Do Androids Dream of an Electric Sheep. Amazing, amazing, and very troubled, unfortunately, writer. and the and the books themselves, stand out as masterpieces. But the the movies that or the media that's spun off from that, or the adaptations of that kind of stuff, have been phenomenal. And again, with The Martian, to your point, really really good book. The movie came out, and it was again Ridley Scott paying a massive amount of respect to the source material. So we should do that. One week when we're a little bit dry on stuff to talk about, we should do that and really have a think about what has translated really well and maybe what hasn't translated really well. Because of course we've seen years and years and years of pretty bad game to movie conversions,
Yeah.
video game to movie conversions. We've seen some really good ones recently, but we've seen many many years of that. So that's definitely something we can talk about coming up. My God, our list of stuff that we need to talk about is just growing and growing and growing. It's fantastic. It really is.
We're not short on content by any means.
No, no, not at all. So we're over the hour. Um, and we want to try and be respectful for people's time and certainly their attention span. So very very quickly, this week, what are you watching? Let's just talk about what we're watching this week. So let's close on Sean. What is Sean Hoffman when he's not working his butt off, when he's not driving all over the US this week? Thank goodness. What are you watching this week? And we can kind of talk about the other stuff maybe in a future app.
The big one for me airs this Friday on Apple TV, and that is Masters of the Air. That is
Yay.
the sequel to uh oh my gosh, what's the first one called? I know it's the Pacific and
Band of
oh
Brothers.
my Band of Brothers. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Oh my gosh, like those movies, or if you, I'm gonna call them a movie. I'm
Yeah,
calling
yeah,
them a
yeah,
movies. I
yeah.
don't know.
No, it's fair.
Those are so influential. I mean, they hold an emotional place in my heart because I remember watching them the first time with my dad, and so that has a huge emotional connection there. And it's just the quality of storytelling is rare, I think, in
Yeah.
especially like a series like that. So I'm very excited to start with that.
Something quite
Like
classic about them, isn't there? Do you understand what I mean by that? I mean, I've
yeah,
I've seen I've seen both. I mean, Band of Brothers I've seen more than once, and I've seen the Pacific as well. But there's something quite classic about them. Not, I mean, I'm not saying they're in any way old fashioned, but there's something quite classic in terms of storytelling, albeit a little bit grittier because an awful lot of old war stories perhaps didn't show the grit and the absolute horror of warfare. But there is
I
something
know.
classic about them. There's something reassuringly quality about those series that I really respect, and so I'm looking forward to it as well, mate.
I think I agree 1,000,000%. I think it's they don't come across as like for lack of a better term, like war porn, or
Yeah,
just like gory for the sake of being gory. It's there's a reality to it. There is a storytelling narrative, to the point at times when it's uncomfortable, but it serves a purpose.
yeah,
Um, to look through the lens and not just for the sake of in it doesn't pit like a good guy, like, oh, there's the good, there's this
no,
this good guy, and then and it doesn't have that murder porn portion to it. It's a very realistic lens into what,
but
I mean,
but
but
also
also
there's
not, but
typically there's no hero either. I mean, you think about Band
yeah,
of Brothers. I mean that they lost people along the way, and even the commander, guy's name I've forgotten now. Anyway, the point being is that I think he's anyway. Sorry. Point I'm trying to make. There's no heroes there. There's no hero. There's no John Wayne or Burt Lancaster.
yeah.
There's no Sean Connery there. There's no hero there. There's no kind of upstanding. There's no dramatic monologue about war is hell and all that kind of stuff. It's basically normal people. Again, it's
Yeah.
kind of probably aligns itself with my sentiment around one really enjoying the any man or the everyman story. um, and I really like it. I really really enjoy that. So that's a good shout. Um, for myself, I mean, there's so much I need to talk to you. We're never going to run out of ideas for this, Paul. I promise you, because there's so much on our list that we haven't got through tonight. But just to let you know, I'm on a new series now, so I'm watching For All Mankind. Um, on Apple TV. Two reasons: one, I've fallen in love with Apple TV, and I'm just basically going through their kind of top 10 of stuff that I think, oh, that might be interesting. And I think I heard the guys over at Star Wars Explained saying that this was a series that they or a bunch of a series and a bunch of seasons that they'd followed for quite a while. And because again I've fallen in love with Apple TV, I checked it out. I've just finished season one, and I must say it's really really good. I love the alternate universe of scenarios like that. So there was a series that only unfortunately had one season called I can't remember it. But the idea being is that it goes back to our conversation last week. What if what if
Hmm.
the world an event didn't happen or something happened differently, and the scenario here is that what if Russia made it to the moon first as opposed to the US, and what would the consequences of that be? And it's basically respectfully following um, the timeline in the 1960s, assuming that it was the Russians that originally landed on the moon as opposed to the US, and the consequences of that. And I'm really really enjoying it. And it's very there's nothing particularly fantastic about the whole thing. It's just an alternative take on history. So
Yeah,
it's a I'm looking, we're looking backwards in time, but it's an alternative take on that, and I love that kind of perverse or that kind of skewed, skewed story. It's great. It's really, really good.
yeah.
Um,
Apple TV's got some really good content on there. Have you
they
have?
they they've got some boo boos on there as well. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know if you did you watch Invasion?
I have not. I was going to talk about Severance. Have you watched Severance?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
That needs to go next on your Apple TV list.
Okay,
That is
okay.
just
Well,
a
that'll have
mind.
it'll have to be third because I did watch again. It's another you know bloated sci-fi subject, but I watched season one of Foundation when it
Mm,
first came out, and season two's been up for a while now, and I know it's going to hurt because it needs a lot of concentration. It's one of those programs that I'm going to have to watch with a lot of coffee, and nothing just because it'll need an awful lot of concentration. So, but I'll definitely add it to the list, mate. Brilliant.
yeah, I think that's all we got time for this week. But I don't know if we've got plenty to talk about in the future, and
Oh, we've
so
got loads. We haven't even scratched the surface yet.
this is awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, but I think we're getting close to time, so I can let people know where you can find us. You can find us at justshillin.com. We have a little website that's available where you can find links to all of the podcast on all over the place that it's supported. If you want to send us an email or voicemail, you can send that to feedback@justshillin.com, and that will make it to us. Um, Andy, do you have anywhere that people can find you, or do you want us just find us
I,
here?
I would love for you guys to find us here. You'll find me on X and on Blue Sky at it's a weird one. It's Mingana or Mingana 1972 or 1972. That's my gamer profile, and it's kind of followed me everywhere else as well. But no
See, that was
pressure
a
there
trap.
because
That
I'm
was a
not.
trap.
I'm
I
not.
wanted to hear you pronounce it because I never know how to say it, and
It's
so I'm
me,
like, I'm gonna make him say it.
Mingana, Mingana, and it's yeah, no, it's I'm not one for for social media, but I am there if you want to reach out to me. And yourself,
And you can
Sean?
you can find me on intermittently on Blue Sky. My handle is Shawn.party. Um, yep, that's what it is. I don't know why I picked it, but that's also my website, so it works. But yeah, thanks for checking us out, and until next time.
Thank you, guys. Keep the faith.